Las Vegas is the city where impossible things get built. They put an Egyptian pyramid in the middle of the desert. They recreated the canals of Venice. They built the Eiffel Tower, the Statue of Liberty, and a volcano that erupts every 30 minutes. When you have enough money and enough audacity, you can build anything in Las Vegas. But here's the thing nobody talks about. For every resort that opened its doors, there is one that died before anyone ever walked through them. Projects that got approved, got funded, got announced with champagne and confetti, and then vanished. Today we are counting down the top 10 Las Vegas projects that were canceled before they ever opened. Some never broke ground, some got halfway built, and one was actually finished. 26 stories of glass and steel, completed, inspected, and then demolished piece by piece without a single guest ever checking in. That one is number 1, and it cost over $275 million. But first, the dream projects, the ones that existed only as blueprints and press releases and renderings that made investors reach for their checkbooks. Number 10, the London Resort and Casino. Picture this. You are walking down the Las Vegas Strip and suddenly you see Tower Bridge. Not a photo of Tower Bridge. The actual Tower Bridge, rebuilt brick by brick in the Nevada desert. Behind it, Big Ben rises into the sky. The Houses of Parliament stretch along the boulevard. And towering over everything, a replica of the London Eye spinning slowly against the desert sunset. That was the plan. In 2003, developers announced the London Resort and Casino. It would sit directly across from the Luxor, bringing a slice of Britain to the heart of Sin City. The resort would include a Harrods department store, a Piccadilly Circus shopping district, and more British theming than you could shake a fish and chips at. The observation wheel alone was an $86 million addition, and this was years before the high roller was even a concept. But the funding never came together. The project collapsed. Developers tried again a few years later with a different site. That attempt failed too. London never made it to Las Vegas. The land sat empty, and the London Eye, Vegas would eventually get its own giant wheel, but it took another decade, and it had nothing to do with this project. Number 9, the Moon Resort. If the London Resort was ambitious, this one was insane. In the late 1990s, someone pitched a space-themed casino resort unlike anything Vegas had ever seen. The centerpiece would be a massive dome. Inside that dome, lasers would project images of the lunar surface onto the ceiling, creating the illusion that you were gambling on the moon. The hotel rooms would be designed to look like spacecraft. The hallways would feel like you were walking through a space station, and the restaurant, a revolving floor that simulated the sensation of walking on the moon while you ate your steak. This was not a joke. This was a real proposal with real concept art and real investors sitting in real meetings discussing whether Las Vegas was ready for a lunar casino. It never got past the planning stage. The technology was not quite there. The budget was astronomical. And honestly, Vegas in the late 90s was still figuring out if families wanted to visit, let alone whether they wanted to pretend they were astronauts. The Moon Resort remained a fever dream, a what if, a reminder that in Las Vegas, no idea is too crazy to pitch, but some ideas are too crazy to build. Number 8, the San Francisco Hotel and Casino. This one hurts because it came from someone who had already proven he could do it. In 1997, developer Mark Advent announced plans for the San Francisco Hotel and Casino. Advent was not some dreamer with a napkin sketch. He had just finished building New York, New York, the resort with the Statue of Liberty and the Brooklyn Bridge and the roller coaster that weaves through a Manhattan skyline. It was a hit. Tourists loved it, so Advent figured why stop at one city? The San Francisco project would feature 9 towers, some rising as high as 70 stories. The exterior would replicate the San Francisco skyline, including a version of the Transamerica Pyramid right there on the Strip. The resort would have over 2,000 rooms and a 90,000 square foot casino. Advent had 3 potential sites picked out. He started talking to partners. Harvey's, the casino company, considered jumping in, and then Harvey's dropped out. Without a major partner, the financing fell apart. The project stalled. Advent moved on to other things, and Las Vegas never got its slice of San Francisco, which means somewhere in a storage unit or an architect's hard drive, there are renderings of a 70-story Transamerica Pyramid towering over the Strip, a version of Vegas that almost existed. 3 cities that almost came to Las Vegas: London, the Moon, San Francisco. All of them killed before a single foundation was poured. But the next 2 projects were not just ambitious, they were genuinely weird. One involved a famous sinking ship, the other involved the Starship Enterprise, and both of them got surprisingly close to actually happening. Number 7, the Titanic Hotel and Casino. In 1999, Bob Stu Stupak had an idea. If you do not know Bob Stupak, he was the closest thing Las Vegas ever had to P.T. Barnum, a showman, a hustler, a guy who once put a $100,000 bill on his casino wall just to get people to walk in and look at it. He built Vegas World, one of the tackiest casinos in the city, and somehow made it wildly profitable. Then he built the Stratosphere Tower, the tallest observation deck in the country. Stupak did not think small, and in 1999, fresh off the success of the Titanic movie that had just won 11 Academy Awards, he announced his next project, a 400-foot replica of the RMS Titanic, right there on Las Vegas Boulevard. The ship would be the centerpiece of a $1.2 billion resort. Behind it, a 15-story hotel shaped like an iceberg. Inside the iceberg, 1,200 rooms. The complex would include a theater, an amusement park, a zoo, and a nightclub called the Icebreaker. Stupak wanted to build a monument to one of history's greatest disasters and turn it into a party destination. The Las Vegas Planning Commission said no. The site was near residential areas. Neighbors complained. Stupak tried a different location. The city council rejected that one too. The Titanic Hotel sank before it ever set sail, and the irony was not lost on anyone. Number 6, the USS Enterprise Resort. This one still hurts for Star Trek fans. In 1992, entertainment designer Gary Goddard submitted a proposal to the Las Vegas Downtown Redevelopment Competition. Goddard was not some amateur. He had designed theme park attractions for Universal and Disney. He knew how to build impossible things. His pitch: a full-scale replica of the Starship Enterprise from Star Trek. Not a model, not a facade. The actual ship, built to the exact dimensions from the movies, sitting in the middle of downtown Las Vegas. Goddard later wrote about the project, quote, "My concept was to do something so large and so epic, it would fire the imaginations of people around the world," end quote. The Enterprise would include all the rooms, chambers, decks, and corridors from the films. You could dine in the Starfleet dining area. You could explore the bridge. High-speed travelators would whisk you from deck to deck. There were plans for ride elements, immersive experiences, the works. The budget was $150 million. Goddard spent 5 months developing the concept. The Paramount licensing team loved it. The Las Vegas mayor loved it. The redevelopment committee loved it. One man killed it. Paramount chairman Stanley Jaffe looked at the proposal and allegedly said, quote, "I do not want to be the guy that approved this, and then it is a flop and sitting out there in Vegas forever." End quote. And that was it. The Enterprise never launched. Downtown Las Vegas continued to struggle for another decade, and somewhere in Gary Goddard's files, there are blueprints for a starship that could have changed everything. Number 5, Xanadu. This is the project that should have changed Las Vegas forever, and it was killed by a sewer pipe. The year was 1975. Architect Martin Stern Jr. had just finished designing the International Hotel and the original MGM Grand. He was one of the most respected architects in Vegas, and he had a vision. A 20-story pyramid rising from the desert, not Egyptian themed, more Aztec, stepped sides, a massive atrium in the center, inside 1,700 hotel rooms, a casino, convention facilities, and an indoor river. The design included hanging gardens, a rooftop solar energy plant, and an extravagant light show. It would have been the first themed mega resort in Las Vegas history. Before the Mirage, before the Luxor, before Excalibur, before any of them. The county commissioners approved it, the site was ready. 48 acres at the corner of Tropicana and Las Vegas Boulevard, right where the Excalibur sits today. And then the developers hit a problem. The sewer lines in that part of the strip could not handle a resort that size. Las Vegas officials told the developers they would need to pay for a new sewer line installation. The developers refused. They insisted the existing infrastructure was fine. Neither side would budge. The project died. For 15 years, that prime corner of the strip sat empty. In 1990, Excalibur finally opened on the site. 3 years later, the Luxor opened next door with its own pyramid design. Xanadu was 18 years ahead of its time. The pyramid, the atrium, the themed immersion, all of it showed up eventually in other resorts. Just not in Xanadu, because someone did not want to pay for a sewer pipe. A sinking ship, a starship, and a pyramid killed by plumbing. Those are the projects that died on paper, the ones that never broke ground, the dreams that evaporated before the first shovel hit dirt. But the next 3 projects got much further. Developers bought land, they demolished existing casinos, they poured foundations and erected steel beams. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars, and then they watched it all collapse Number 4. Alain Las Vegas. Australian billionaire James Packer wanted into Las Vegas badly. Packer ran Crown Resorts, one of the biggest casino companies in Australia. He had operations in Macau. He partied with Hollywood celebrities. He was engaged to Mariah Carey, and he was convinced that the north end of the Las Vegas Strip was about to explode. In 2014, Packer and his partners paid $260 million for 35 acres of prime real estate. The site sat directly across from Wynn Las Vegas, right next to Fashion Show Mall. It was one of the best pieces of undeveloped land on the entire strip. The project was called Alain Las Vegas. The plans were gorgeous: 2 hotel towers, 1,100 rooms, a man-made lake, bars, restaurants, pools, convention space, a $2 billion resort targeting the ultra-wealthy. Andrew Pascal, a former Wynn executive, signed on as CEO. The target opening was 2018, and then nothing happened. Packer could not raise the financing. The $2 billion he needed to actually build the thing never materialized. For 2 years, that $260 million piece of land sat empty while Pascal gave interviews insisting the project was still on track. Quote, "The financing is complicated because it is a multi-billion-dollar greenfield development," end quote. In December 2016, Crown Resorts pulled out. Packer was dealing with problems back in Australia. His employees in China had been arrested. His engagement to Mariah Carey had fallen apart. Las Vegas was no longer a priority. The land went up for sale. Wynn bought it in 2017 for $336 million. James Packer had lost money on Las Vegas before. He was an investor in the Fontainebleau when it collapsed in 2009. Some people never learn. Number 3. The Las Vegas Plaza. This one is a masterclass in buying at the worst possible moment. In 2007, Israeli investment group Elad bought the New Frontier Hotel and Casino for $1.2 billion. At the time, it was the most expensive land sale in Las Vegas history. The New Frontier had been on the Strip since 1942. Elvis Presley made his Vegas debut there. Howard Hughes used to stay there. It was a piece of history. Elad did not care about history. They cared about location, and the New Frontier was sitting on 35 acres of prime real estate. The plan was the Las Vegas Plaza, a $5 billion mega resort inspired by the famous Plaza Hotel in New York. 3 hotels with 3,500 rooms, a casino the size of 3 football fields, water features to rival the Bellagio fountains, high-end shopping, Broadway-style theaters, the works. In November 2007, they demolished the New Frontier. The implosion was a party, fireworks, crowds, champagne, and then the economy collapsed. The housing market crashed, credit markets froze. Las Vegas was one of the hardest hit cities in America. Home values dropped 50%. Construction projects across the valley went bankrupt. The Las Vegas Plaza never broke ground. Not a single shovel of dirt was moved. For 9 years, that 35-acre site sat empty. The most expensive vacant lot in Las Vegas history, baking in the desert sun. In 2016, Crown Resorts bought the land from Elad for $280 million. Elad had paid $1.2 billion. They lost over $920 million. Crown planned to build the Echelon Project there. That failed too. The land eventually went to Wynn. The New Frontier was demolished for nothing. An icon erased for a dream that never came true. Number 2. Echelon Place. If the Las Vegas Plaza story is sad, this one is tragic. Boyd Gaming was a Las Vegas institution. They had been in the city since the 1970s. They owned properties all over town, and in the mid-2000s, they owned one of the most legendary casinos on the Strip, the Stardust. The Stardust opened in 1958. For nearly 50 years, it was one of the most famous names in Las Vegas. The sign alone was iconic. Siegfried and Roy performed there. It was in casino. It was old Vegas. Real Vegas, but the Stardust was showing its age. Revenue was falling, the building needed work, and Boyd looked at that property and saw something else. 87 acres, right on the Strip, enough land for the biggest project Las Vegas had ever seen. In January 2006, Boyd announced Echelon Place, a $4.8 billion mega resort with 5 hotels and 5,300 rooms. Partners included Shangri-La Hotels and Morgan's Hotel Group, which would bring the Delano and Mondrian brands to Vegas. There would be a 140,000 square foot casino, 750,000 square feet of convention space, 30 restaurants, restaurants, and 2 theaters. This was not a rendering. This was not a press release. This was happening. In November 2006, the Stardust closed. In March 2007, they imploded it. The 32-story tower was the tallest building ever imploded on the Las Vegas Strip. Thousands of people watched. It took over 20 minutes for the dust to clear. 3 months later, Boyd broke ground on Echelon Place. The opening was scheduled for 2010. Then August 2008 happened. The credit markets collapsed. Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. The Great Recession began, and suddenly nobody was lending money for casino projects. Boyd had already spent $1.5 billion. The steel skeleton of the resort was rising from the ground, and they had to stop. For 5 years, that half-built skeleton sat on the Strip, a monument to ambition and bad timing. Boyd spent $15 million a year just to maintain the site. Security, property taxes, keeping the weeds from taking over. In 2013, Boyd sold the entire project to Genting Group for $350 million. They had demolished one of the most iconic casinos in Las Vegas history. They had spent $1.5 billion on construction, and they sold it all for $350 million. That site eventually became Resorts World Las Vegas, which opened in 2021. It is a beautiful property, and it is built on the grave of the Stardust. Boyd destroyed an icon and got nothing in return. Alain Plaza, Echelon, billions of dollars spent on projects that never opened a single room. But number 1 is different. Number 1 was not canceled. Number 1 was built. 26 stories of glass and steel, designed by one of the most famous architects in the world, rising from the center of the most expensive development in Las Vegas history. And then they tore it down, piece by piece, floor by floor, without a single guest ever checking in. Number 1, the Harmon Tower. This is the story of a $275 million building that was completed, inspected, and demolished without a single guest ever spending a single night inside. The year was 2005. MGM Resorts announced the most ambitious project in Las Vegas history, City Center, an $8.5 billion mixed-use development right in the heart of the Strip. Multiple hotels, condominiums, a massive shopping center, the whole thing designed by a who's who of celebrity architects, and the crown jewel, the Harmon Hotel. The Harmon was designed by Lord Norman Foster, one of the most famous architects on the planet, the man who designed the Gherkin in London, the Reichstag Dome in Berlin, Apple's headquarters in Cupertino. When you hire Norman Foster, you are making a statement. The Eistedus plan was a 49-story elliptical tower with a glass facade that would catch the desert light like nothing else on the Strip. 400 hotel rooms, 207 luxury condominiums, a spa, restaurants. The Harmon would be operated by the Light Group, turning it into a non-gaming boutique hotel for people who wanted Vegas without the slot machines. Construction began in 2007, the tower started rising, and then in 2008, inspectors found something wrong. The steel reinforcing bars inside the concrete columns had been installed incorrectly. Not in a few spots, not on one floor, in 15 of the first 22 floors that had been built. Rebar is what gives concrete its strength. It is the skeleton inside the muscle, and the rebar in the Harmon was wrong, improperly placed, improperly tied, the kind of mistake that does not show up until an earthquake hits. Engineers ran the numbers, they calculated the risk, and they came back with a terrifying conclusion. If a major earthquake hit Las Vegas, the Harmon Tower would likely collapse. City Center officials estimated there was a 50% chance of an earthquake strong enough to bring the building down occurring within the next 30 years. 50%, a coin flip, and if you lost that coin flip, a 49-story building full of people would come crashing down onto the Las Vegas Strip. They stopped construction immediately. The original 49-story plan was scrapped. The condominiums were canceled. Buyers who had put deposits down were offered refunds or units in other MGM properties. The tower topped out at 26 stories, an empty shell wrapped in blue glass. And then the lawsuits began. MGM blamed the general contractor Perini Building Company. They said Perini's workers had botched the rebar installation. Perini blamed the designers. They said the plans were flawed. Subcontractors blamed everyone. Everyone blamed everyone else. For years, lawyers fought over who was responsible while the Harmon sat there, empty, unfinished. A 26-story mistake in the middle of the most expensive real estate in Las Vegas. MGM wrapped advertisements around the building, City Center promotions, Cirque du Soleil shows. One journalist called it the most expensive billboard in the world. The rest of City Center opened in December 2009. Aria, Vidara, the Crystal Shopping Center, billions of dollars of gleaming new architecture. And right in the middle of it all, a building that could never never open. Perini's lawyers argued the tower could be fixed. They said $21 million would repair the structural problems. MGM said that was fantasy. Their engineers concluded the building was beyond repair. In 2014, a judge finally ruled. The Harmon had to come down. But here's the thing about demolishing a building in the middle of city center. You cannot just implode it. The Harmon was too close to Aria, too close to the crystals, too close to everything, and implosion would send debris into neighboring structures. It would shut down the strip. It was not an option. So they did it the hard way. Workers climbed to the top of the Harmon Tower and began taking it apart by hand, floor by floor, piece by piece. They cut the steel. They broke up the concrete. They lowered chunks of the building down with cranes. It took over a year. It cost $11.5 million just for the demolition. In August 2015, on an earnings call, MGM CEO Jim Murren said something that summed up the whole disaster. Quote, "We finished deconstructing the nightmare that was the Harmon." End quote. The nightmare. That is what the CEO called it. A $275 million nightmare. Today, if you walk through City Center, you will find a 4-story retail building called 63. It sits on the spot where the Harmon once stood. It is fine. It is forgettable. It is what you build when your original plan turns into the most expensive mistake in Las Vegas history. The Harmon Tower was designed by one of the greatest architects alive. It was part of the most ambitious development Vegas had ever seen. It rose 26 stories into the desert sky, and it was torn down without a single guest ever checking in. 10 projects, billions of dollars, exposed rebar and empty lots, and dreams that turned to dust. What connects them? Look at the timeline. Xanadu died in 1975 during an oil crisis and recession. Echelon and Plaza and the Harmon all collapsed during the Great Recession of 2008. Alain fell apart when financing dried up in 2016. Las Vegas runs on confidence. When money is flowing and tourists are spending and everyone believes the good times will never end, anything seems possible. You can build a pyramid. You can build a replica of New York City. You can build a starship if you want. But the moment confidence breaks, everything stops. Credit lines freeze. Investors pull out. And suddenly that $4.8 billion mega resort becomes an 87-acre liability. The lesson Vegas keeps learning and forgetting. Timing is everything, and timing is the one thing you cannot control. But there is another pattern here: hubris. Every one of these projects believed they were different. The developers of Xanadu thought they did not need to pay for a sewer line. Elad thought they could ride out any downturn. Boyd thought the Stardust name was worth less than the land it sat on. And James Packer thought he could will a $2 billion resort into existence on charm and celebrity connections. They were all wrong. Las Vegas rewards audacity, but it punishes arrogance. There is a difference. Here's the strange thing though, some of these cursed projects did eventually come back to life. The Fontainebleau sat as an empty blue shell on the North Strip for 14 years. 14 years of bankruptcy, ownership changes, name changes, and false starts. In 2023, it finally opened. The original developer Jeffrey Soffer came back, bought it again, and finished what he started. It took almost 2 decades, but he did it. Resorts World Las Vegas opened in 2021 on the same land where the Stardust once stood, where Boyd's Echelon skeleton rusted in the desert sun. Genting Group bought the site, tore down what remained, and built something new. It is a beautiful property. 3 hotels, 3,500 rooms, the first new resort on the Strip in over a decade. The land heals, eventually, but the scars remain. The New Frontier is gone forever. The Stardust is gone forever. You cannot visit them. You cannot walk through their lobbies or play at their tables or feel what old Vegas felt like. They exist only in photographs and memories and the occasional documentary. That is the real cost of these canceled projects. Not just the money, the history that got erased to make room for dreams that never came true. So what happens next? Right now, Las Vegas is building again. The Sphere opened in 2023. New arenas are being planned. The A's are supposedly building a baseball stadium. Developers are buying land and drawing renderings and pitching investors. And somewhere in an office right now, there is a project that will never be built. Maybe it is a replica of the Coliseum. Maybe it is a Mars-themed casino. Maybe it is something we cannot even imagine yet. The pitch will sound incredible. The renderings will look stunning. The developers will project absolute confidence. And then something will go wrong. The economy will dip. A partner will back out. Someone will find a crack in a foundation attraction that should not be there. It always happens. It will always happen because Las Vegas is a city built on risk, and risk means failure. Not every time, but enough times to fill a list like this one. The difference between the Bellagio and Xanadu is not just money. It is timing. It is luck. It is knowing when to push forward and when to fold. Las Vegas is a city of winners, but the only reason winning feels good is because so many people lose. Next time you are on the strip, look around. Look at the empty lots between the mega resorts. Look at the gaps in the skyline where towers should be. Look at the north end of the boulevard where projects have been promised and canceled for 20 years. Now you know what almost was, and now you know why it never happened. Thanks for watching. If you want more stories about Vegas dreams that died, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling me which canceled project you wish had actually been built. Personally, I still want to see that Starship Enterprise. I will see you in the next one.